Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Dane Mahoney. I appear today as a citizen of Wisconsin, a husband, a father, and a career law enforcement officer with over 32 years of experience in that field, and as Dane County Sheriff. I appear to speak on my concern as the Chief Law Enforcement Officer in Dane County for the safety and welfare of our citizens and the citizens of our entire state, which I feel, based on this proposed legislation, is overzealous and fast-tracking, and that of the other two proposals aimed at putting concealed weapons in the hands of untrained and unregulated persons and allowing their free access to schools, places of worship, and recreation, which I, based upon my experience, am confident will lead to an eventual unnecessary tragedy among families and neighbors. I find some irony that we're meeting today to talk of concealed carry when today marks National Police Week. That week, once a year, that our nation pauses to reflect on the ultimate sacrifice our men and women make in protecting our communities. Currently, nationwide, assaults on law enforcement officers are at a 50-year high. Although traffic crashes continue to be the major and primary killer of our law enforcement officers every year, firearm assaults on police officers are at a 180% increase. Wisconsin already, in 2011, has lost one police officer and several more critically injured. Wisconsin enjoys a low violent crime rate today because our lawmakers and government leaders in the past have put great emphasis in ensuring our communities have law enforcement resources and highly trained personnel to address the concerns and challenges of a changing society. Not because we encouraged our citizens to arm themselves and take matters into their own hands, unlike many of those states who offered unregulated concealed carry laws in the past. In Wisconsin, we rely on law enforcement to keep our communities safe. And in doing so, we mandate that our law enforcement officers train in the use of handguns a minimum of 52 hours and to a high proficiency level before we even allow them on the streets of our communities. Once retired, we continue to allow these professionals to carry a handgun, even concealed, but only after they continue to meet a high standard of qualification on a regular basis. Most alarming of each of the proposals that have been brought forth to date is complete disregard for proper training and certification for our citizen applicants, and detailed background investigations and permitting, and the accompanying proposals fail to require in Wisconsin. We should note that in Wisconsin, when you crawl behind the wheel of your car, or place your seat on a Harley-Davidson motorcycle, before you do so, we don't allow it until you prove that you can do it safely and with a certain skill set. And if you were born after January of 1973, we don't allow you into our woods to hunt without a hunter safety permit, which requires both classroom and hands-on training. Why would our lawmakers consider allowing anyone armed with a handgun into our neighborhoods, our schools, our places of worship without training or preparation or proof thereof? For what would prove to be a highly charged and emotional event should anyone choose to use that weapon. Bottom line for me, Mr. Chair, and for Representative Krug, I ask you to hearken back to those days in which you were both law enforcement officers. Mr. Chairman, as a former Chief Deputy of the Door County Sheriff's Office and a 30-year career law enforcement officer, Representative Pruitt, former Juneau County law officer. And public safety was your primary priority. Would you have supported these proposals as they are? I suspect not. I remember how important training and policy guidelines were in doing the job and overseeing the staff that we saw every day, and ensuring the safety of those who were charged to protect our communities. If with the enormous challenges our state and citizens are facing this and the coming years, the priority of this session of the Wisconsin Assembly is legalizing concealed carry of weapons in our communities without proper training, I would respectfully request that you first slow the process down and reach out to law enforcement leaders and organizations, members of the NRA and others who train those to properly handle firearms for their valuable insight, and truly consider mandatory training and certification of all applicants prior to conducting a thorough background investigation and permitting by the Wisconsin Department of Justice. Establish a proper fee structure for all costs of that background check and permitting so as to eliminate further unfunded mandates to the Wisconsin Department of Justice. I would ask that you maintain a database of all CCW permits accessible to law enforcement agencies for approved purposes, and then tie that CCW database to Wisconsin DOT vehicle license records, accessible only to law enforcement through approved and accountable means during traffic stops. In closing, Mr. Chair, my experience and insight tells me that if these proposals for concealed carry are not amended, our citizens will once again have thrust upon them more bad public policy. And the citizens we took an oath to serve deserve much more than that from each of us. I share my colleague, Sheriff Clark's concern about individuals who continue to go into our communities armed with concealed handguns. I would ask that as you consider allowing our citizens concealed carry permits, that we look at serious penalties for violating those laws. Protect men and women who every day put on this uniform to ensure the safeties of this body, our communities, and our state. We must find a way to take guns out of the hands of felons. We must deter individuals from arming themselves in the face of a domestic violence incident. We must put an end to handguns on our urban streets. I want to thank you for allowing me to share my experience, my words, and my thoughts. And I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have for me.
Any questions, Representative Hebel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Sheriff Mahoney. First of all, I want to start off by saying thanks to you and your fellow employees during our very difficult times here at the Capitol during the first 4 months of this year. Your professionalism, along with the professionalism of the state police and also the Capitol Police, was exemplary in very difficult times, and frankly, you made national news with the quality of care you gave to the citizens of Wisconsin. So I want to publicly recognize the fine job that you and others did with regards to that. With regards to training, can you be specific as to what your proposal would be with regards to what training would be appropriate prior to getting a license to carry?
Well, much like my colleague, I believe that there has to be mandatory training on the nomenclature of a handgun, the proper handling, emotional impacts of being involved in deadly force situations. And I really believe that rather than me coming up with a number, that we pull from law enforcement leaders from across the state, from hunter safety instructors, and others in our community who have that expertise, and come up with a workable solution among all of us. You know, I'm not here to advocate against concealed carry. I'm here to advocate that if the state of Wisconsin chooses to put concealed carry permits in the hands of our citizens, that they do so by mandating that they're trained and adequately equipped to safely go into our communities armed with a handgun. There's no doubt in my mind that as close as we've become over the past years, that we probably will pass some fashion of concealed carry in this session. I just ask that we do so mindful of the need for mandatory training, mandatory permitting, to allow on those rare occasions when law enforcement needs a database to track those in our communities that have concealed carry permits, that we're allowed to do that. Likewise, if that database is abused, we provide penalties for those law enforcement officers who misuse the database as well.
Can you just briefly discuss the police agencies in Wisconsin, where their position is generally with regards to the bill before us? For instance, the Wisconsin Sheriff's Association, have they taken a position with regards to this?
The Badger State Sheriff's Association has not taken a position, and we will be debating this issue next week as we meet as a body. I'm not familiar with the Wisconsin Chiefs of Police.
They're opposed to it according to the sheet.
But I am aware that there was a press release put out by the Dane County Chiefs of Police last evening stressing opposition to this bill, but yet requesting that should a bill be considered and passed, to include proper training and permitting.
If I may address a question to Ledge Council, please. Ledge Council, is my understanding there is no training requirement in the bill currently, as far as you know? I don't believe the author is still here, is he?
Yes.
Do you, Terry, is there training required in the bill?
In the current bill is original, there's not.
No, okay. Thank you very much. And also, is there a database requirement with regards to the CCW? Is there?
Dealt with the Department of Justice.
Okay, so there's no requirement that there be a database that be established. I think that's an excellent recommendation. I think hunter safety requires, what is that 10 hours of training, or how long is it to be able to go hunting in Wisconsin?
I'll be honest, I don't know, I was born prior to 70.
I know boater safety is 10 hours.
Yeah, George is here.
George, how many hours is it? Is it 16 hours of training? Would, Dave, with your knowledge of hunting and with carrying a concealed weapon, do you think there should be more or less training for carrying a concealed weapon using 16 hours as the base? Would 16 hours, hunter safety, is that a fair comparison to carry concealed?
No, I believe that it should be more than 16 hours. But I'm not prepared as a city today to give you a number.
Is there, okay.
I can tell you that to be a certified law enforcement officer, to be a police officer, requires 52 hours of training prior to hitting the street.
52.
52 hours.
Okay.
And I can tell you that my position would be, we wouldn't need to put 52 hours in.
And would you require continuous training with regards to concealed carry? Update every 2 years, every 4 years, whatever?
Certification.
Certification, okay. And how long would you recommend that license to carry be given for? Lifetime, or is there?
No, I think that there needs to be a time period. And I'm not prepared to tell you today what that time period should be.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Kessler. Okay. First, I want to thank you very much, Sheriff Mahoney. You're my friend. We've worked together on other legislation, and I appreciate the insights that you have made. But I assume that 52 hours is not all weapons training, or is that all weapons training?
Oh, that's classroom and weapons.
Okay, and but it includes other police issues.
No, that 52 hours is firearms.
52 hours of firearms training. Okay, so I appreciate that. One of the things that I give